Well, hello, my loves. It's Liz Ann here from High Vibes Life, helping you make the rest of your life the very best of your life. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Today I'm going to talk to you about High Vibes Life, being a sensitive, depression, and self-love, and how they all tie in together. So I wanted to start out by giving you a little bit of my own background and in depression and in being a sensitive. So I have always been a sensitive, although I didn't understand, or empath, I didn't understand these terms for years. I just recently, within the last 10 years, have come to understand what it is to be a sensitive. But for the majority of my life, the first half of my life, I didn't know that I was a sensitive. I knew I was a sensitive person. I knew I felt like I was way more sensitive than a lot of people around me, that my siblings and a lot of people at school and in work could tolerate things a lot better than I could. But I didn't understand this as a part of, like, a gift, a part of my actual essence and who I am as an eternal being. And I grew up in an abusive home, a chaotic, abusive childhood. And my father was somewhat physically abusive, but he was extremely emotionally abusive in that he was very degrading. He treated us with a lot of contempt and anger and rage, and usually when he was an alcoholic, he had a lot of his own issues that he never dealt with, and we got the brunt end of that. And being a sensitive child, of course, this was just devastating, absolutely destroyed me as a person. And to just kind of put it into perspective, my mother put me into kindergarten early. She lied about my birthday so she could put me into school early when I was 4. And in kindergarten and first grade, I was top of my reading class. But by the time I was in 3rd or 4th grade, I would stutter trying to even read. I was terrified to be asked to read. I read really slow. I stuttered over the words. I always sat in the back of the class. I was a terrified little girl. I looked for the other kids that didn't have any friends, and those were the ones I clung to. And I always just grew up, wondering why, I was the way I was. I didn't understand it. And it wasn't until I was in my 40s and I got therapy and I started to understand what was the abuse that you were going through. It was the things that, in your life and in your environment it had broken down every bit of boundaries I had, every bit of self-trust, every bit of anything that I should have had as a child and have been developed and nurtured in me. Not only was it not developed and nurtured, it was actually completely destroyed. And so by the time I got out on my own, I just went hog wild to just feel free and not feel like I ever had to go home and be beaten down by, the verbal abuse that I got from my father almost on a regular basis whenever he was around. And then, my mother was a very unhappy person as well, and I didn't have a whole lot of connection with her on an emotional level. So there wasn't a lot of, I felt like my mother loved me, but I didn't feel secure, or feel like she was a person I could turn to when I was being bullied at school. I just felt alone in the world, basically. And because of this, I developed a lot of personality characteristics that kept me in a place in all my relationships where I was always a people pleaser, always. And I also was always trying to mimic and trying to figure out, well, how am I supposed to be so that people will like me and I won't be bullied and I won't be hurt. And so I was always watching people that were liked and kind of, copycatting that. Okay, so that's what you need to do. This is how you need to dress. This is how you need to act. This is how you need to be. And then I had a spiritual experience where somebody told me that Jesus loved me, and I was so happy about that. And I went in to searching the Bible and searching for a church, and I ended up in a church that felt very safe to me, but it was also, again, a place where I was being controlled, and but I was told that I was okay and I was a good person now, and you know, there was nothing wrong with me, and I came to just revel in that and be really happy with that. But I was being very controlled, you know, what to dress, you know, who I could be friends with, where I could, you know, allow my kids to go and not to go. I mean, just everything, you know, was controlled in my life. And plus I had to be at church all the time, and I had to be serving there constantly. And so I never, ever, ever developed a sense of myself. So I am this very, very sensitive person already that has this huge low self-esteem, and trying so hard to be a good person, first to have other people like me, and then to that God will accept me, you know, into heaven, into this place where I'll never have to worry, or you know, about these things ever again. I'll just be loved and accepted as long as I prove myself here that I'm worthy of it. And so by the time I was 40, I was depressed. And I'm a very upbeat and bubbly person by nature, like I've said. And I noticed, I was noticing it. Like I didn't even understand depression at the time, but I was noticing that I didn't want to get up and go on in life, you know, like I didn't have any enthusiasm in church or anything anymore. Like it was everything I could do to muster up, you know, to be able to give a testimony or go and be in the work or whatever. It was just really hard, and I didn't feel like getting up, and I noticed myself withdrawing and all this. And then I started reading and discovering that, and I remember telling one of my friends, I think I'm depressed. I think I'm getting depressed. And it was just getting worse. And there's a point to all this, because there's so much more to this story than I'm giving you right now. There's so much more I could tell you, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background of where I'm going with this, with High Vibes Life and Self-Love. Anyhow, I ended up having like this nervous breakdown when we were away from home at a revival in another state. I literally went to the altar and I just started bawling, and I didn't stop bawling for 3 days. And I said things. Somebody met me there and was talking to me, and I kept saying over and over, I wish I had a dad that loved me. I wish I had a dad that loved me. And that's when it was almost jolting to me to even hear myself say that, because I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea how much that was bothering me, you know, because you get busy about life. You have these things back there, but you don't pay attention to it. You just get busy about life and, oh, you know, I'm not dealing with that. It's behind me. That's in the past or whatever. I realized I needed to heal. And I thought, oh, okay, this is where my depression is all stemming from. It's because I haven't healed my past. So I went on this healing journey. I was encouraged by people from the church I was attending to get therapy. And so I went ahead and started seeking therapy, and I started to heal. And as I started to heal, I realized every time I was trying to make strides, I would go to church and realize that a lot of what was going on in church and the control was mimicking the original abuse, even though perhaps it wasn't abusive in the same way as my father was. It was mimicking it in so many ways, in that, like, they had the judgment preaching over the pulpit where they were constantly, you know, questioning you and saying, you know, are you reading your Bible? Are you praying? Do you carry a burden for people? Do you, you know, are you sneaking around and not keeping the standard? You know, check your heart, check yourself, check yourself, check yourself. And in a way, it was that constant barrage that I got from my dad as a child, just a constant barrage of verbal assault. And I remember even toward the end, before I left, I remember just kind of thinking, you know, maybe it's just me and I'm just exaggerating, I'm just sensitive to it. So I kept waiting for a positive thing to come over the pulpit, an encouraging thing, saying, you know, you guys are doing great, or, you know, God is pleased with you, or anything like that, you know. And it didn't come. It didn't come. I did that for months on end, thinking, and I would sometimes get encouraged at home, reading my Bible or whatever, and I'd go to church and I'd be encouraged and I'd even testify, and then the message would come and I would just be beaten down. And so I started realizing this. I started realizing there was a lot of fear being put over that pulpit. And I started realizing, and God started speaking to me, or my inner being, or the universe, however you want to put it, it started speaking to my heart and started challenging me on some of the things I was doing and following. And like, why are you doing this? Is it because you truly, you know, want to please God and that you truly feel convicted that this is the way you should live your life? Or is it because somebody has told you this is what God requires of you, and it put a fear on you that if you don't do it, you're gonna, God's not gonna love you anymore. You're gonna backslide or whatever. And backsliding means that not necessarily that he's not gonna love you, but that he's sure not gonna let you into heaven. Eventually, I started writing down the things that I was being shown in my heart, and I ended up self-publishing a book called The Voice of God Within, and it is a direct result of the journaling that I began and continue doing, that on the things that helped me to move out of this church, which I had been in for almost 18 years at the time, and I thought I was going to be in the rest of my life. And so it was a huge deal when I left. It was hard for me. I know it was hard for the church because they have a hard time when somebody leaves, especially somebody that's been there for a long time, and it's hard on them. It was hard on everybody, but it was the most healthiest thing I could have done for myself at that time. And I'm not saying that being at church and then learning the things I did was completely wrong. To this day, I don't believe we should ever feel ashamed or bad about anything from our past, because all of life is hindsight, and so we're learning. So how does this all tie into what my whole subject is, which is high vibes life and being a sensitive? And okay, so number one, sensitive people. Because we are sensitive, one of the things about sensitive people is we feel things probably 100 times more than the average. I hate to even say average, but then people that aren't sensitive, okay? Where people laugh at me, like when I kill a fly, okay? I kill flies. I'll hit a fly with fly swatter, but I feel bad. I feel bad when I eat meat. Every time I sit down to eat meat, I think about the cow or the chicken that gave its life, and the suffering that it might have gone through. I think about those things because I've heard about them. I'm very sensitive to that stuff. I'm sensitive to other people's suffering, and I'm very sensitive to people's energies, and I can read people's energies very clearly. And I'm very sensitive to their judgments and their opinions, and when they're directed at me, especially because of the abuse I've been through, I tend to, withdraw from people like that really deeply. And people might, I've never said anything to you, I've never done anything to you, but it's the way they make me feel. Like they say, it's not so much what you do, it's the way you make people feel. So sensitive people a lot of times end up in relationships that are real controlling, and those can be friendships, those can be romantic relationships, marriage relationships that are very controlling, and they're attracted often to people that are not that sensitive. And sometimes they're attracted to narcissistic type people. And they don't even have to be full-blown narcissistic. They could have just a lot of narcissistic qualities, probably a lot of times coming from their families and stuff. And so I've learned that a lot of sensitive people, what I've observed is in the church, within this type of church setting, this fundamental controlling church setting, what I've come to observe is there is two types of people predominantly, and it's very sensitive people and it's very narcissistic people. So narcissistic people like that idea that I have something that nobody else has, that God chose me, that I have a very important mission. And they love to brag about that. They love to be in positions like the pastor, or one of the elders of the church, or the leader of this or the leader of that. And they're not very sensitive at all to what they say, so they can get over the pulpit and they can bam, 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 bam. I remember, them making fun of people sometimes, or saying things about other religions, and I would just kind of cringe, like, oh my gosh, I hope nobody's here that's been, that has, taken, they think it's just judgment and that's how we're going to get it out of their system. They got to realize how much God hates that. But it's not. It's that they're narcissistic, and they're not sensitive, and they don't know how to be sensitive to people's feelings and emotions. they may try to at times because they realize that if they're not going to bring anybody in and keep the church going. But they have narcissistic ways about them. One of the ways that you can tell they're narcissistic is when you leave, you're cut off from them. Now, they may pray for you. Usually it's this, me being there, I know how they pray. It's help them to see how wrong they are, help them to be miserable in life, and help them, they may pray. But when they come around you again, or if they see you again, or anything, they act completely different with you. There's a cutoff there. There's like, you are no longer us because you left. And I knew that when I left. It was really hard for me. It took me a year just to quit crying. Like I cried almost every day of my life for the first year. It was so hard to leave because it had become my family. And so it was hard to leave that. And then you have these sensitive people. And these sensitive ones are the ones that are always doing the work in the church. The narcissistics, the ones are always the ones leading it and organizing it and telling everybody what they should do. And they may do some things, but they're in the leadership role all the time, and they love to walk up to the pulpit, and they feel real important in life because of what they're doing. They feel like they've got this real important calling in this world, And then you've got all these sensitives, people that are really sensitive to everything, sensitive that they might not be right with God, and sensitive that of everybody and what they're going through around them, and just sensitive about everything. And they're the ones that are gonna, like, I was very sensitive, so I was always one of the ones that whenever they had called out for help for anything, I was there helping, whether we're just doing a play or filling a position or helping with this or helping with that. Even though I had little kids, and I was constantly running around helping at this church constantly. And I noticed that there were some people that were always the ones that was doing the work. And then there were some people that were hardly ever there doing the work. And even if they were there, they didn't do a lot of work. They did a lot of loafing. And so I came to really realize afterwards, not while I was there, but afterwards, and really studying in hindsight and all that, that these churches predominantly have narcissistic type personalities. And like I say, I don't mean that they're all narcissists, full-blown narcissists, but they have a lot of narcissistic characteristics, which is insensitivity and a feeling of self-importance and a little bit of control, having to control. Narcissists are very controlling. And then you have the sensitives that are easily controlled, that are very sensitive, and that are easily put in their place by the narcissists. And that's why people get stuck there, because sensitives, it's extremely painful to ever exit something like that. And narcissists, they can't exit it because they're too, this is their place of feeling so important. Like, they're not just important, they're the most important person in the world, because they're given the word of God. Without it, everybody's going to hell. And so I've been wanting to talk about this, and I got on here. I didn't come here with this video with an outline. I just thought, I'm going to get on here and just talk about this. And so I didn't really know how to title it fully, or exactly how I was going to outline this, but this is very important. Because I feel like with sensitives, they are so susceptible to being in these type of relationships, whether it's a church relationship or other, and being stuck there. And then where depression comes in is depression is always about you pressed down. So when you think of a little child, okay, look, think of the children. Everybody says, I wish I could have the energy of a child. I wish I could have the enthusiasm of a child. I wish I could have the mind to learn that a child has. Why does the child have all that? Because the child has not yet, at this point in its life, when it's still like that and has all that, has not yet been pressed down by societal rules and what they should be and shouldn't be, and what's proper and not proper, and who they are and who they aren't, or what box they fit in and what box they need to stay in, and all those things. And the older we get, the more and more we're squeezed into these boxes. Sometimes in more severe cases, like my home that was very abusive, are we squeezed out completely. And then sometimes it's just a gradual thing. And then by the time you hit 40, you may have accomplished a lot. You may have done a lot. You may have even felt happy a lot of times, but you hit 40 and all of a sudden life just seems like it's leaving you. The enthusiasm of life and wanting to move forward and wanting to go on, and when that happens, when that depression hits, a lot of times that is with sensitive people that have completely lost sight of who they are as a human being. They don't even know really, what they like, what they don't like. They've always been, oh, whatever you want to do, whatever. They've completely shut themselves down. Maybe they dress a certain way. Like I just started wearing this. I have a dress, you can't really tell, but I have a dress on, and I didn't wear a dress for a good 4 years after I left church because I had to wear one all the time. But I'm just starting to realize that I always wanted to wear dresses. I love dresses, but when I was forced to wear them, and then I couldn't, show, this would be unacceptable at church because my shoulders are showing, probably too low, it's just probably wouldn't be able to wear it. So I was forced to wear a certain color, a certain, certain style, and my hair had to be a certain length, and I lost sight of, I had already lost sight of myself before then, but even more so in the church, because they teach, you die to yourself and you live for Christ or whatever. And that means to them, you live for what? For us, for the church, because they think it's not separated. There's no difference. Okay, that's a whole nother video. Depression comes in with sensitives very often because sensitive people are so sensitive. They're always a lot of times trying to take care of everybody's emotions, trying to protect their heart at the same time, and they lose sight of any kind of passion or any kind of sense of what they really do like and don't like. The way to get back out of the depression, to get back to learn, is to learn to acknowledge that you're sensitive, to understand what it is to be a sensitive, to understand different things that played into you disappearing, and to rediscover yourself and to learn to completely fall madly in love with yourselves. The reason I started my whole business with hivibeslife.com, HIVIBES.com. But the reason I started that is because I also realized that I had been living for so many years in this depressive, low vibe, this vibe that was pressing me down and that was negative. And I got out of it a lot in church because, I was happy to serve, and I felt so happy that, I was good, a good girl, clean now, and that I was going to heaven, and I felt like I had purpose. So I felt a lot of joy well up from that at times, but it wasn't sustainable. And the reason it wasn't sustainable was because I was living out somebody else's definition of God, somebody else's definition of what I should be, somebody else's definition of what my life should look like. I was living out other people's opinions and definitions in my life rather than understanding who I am for myself, really who I am, and loving that person 100%, just thinking, wow, she is amazing. Just not in a lifted, I'm so amazing kind of way, but in the way that says the holding life precious, that my life is just as freaking precious as anybody else's life. Holding myself precious and knowing that I can be my own best friend and that I'm powerful enough to supply my own needs, that I don't need other people all the time to come in and make me feel like I'm loved and make me feel like I have worth and that I have value. And I know a lot of people are touting this out there, and I'm glad they are because it's so needed. But what I really want to say is that the way out for a sensitive, out of this depressive kind of thing that a lot of us fall into, we get up and we're like, oh, okay, another day, right? And let's see if we can make this day feel good kind of thing, is to really learn to love yourself and be in touch with yourself. And like I said in the beginning, when you think of those little kids, when they get up out of bed and when they are in life, they're engaged in life and they're excited about life. And when it's time to do something new, they're excited. And you know, they might have a little fit sometimes that they're having a lot of fun and you're trying to take them away from that or whatever. But kids in general are very resilient because they are engaged in their life, in their life, in their, what feels good to them and what they are interested. They're not engaged in, not in a healthy home. They're not engaged in, oh, you know, how can I, you know, oh, mom's hurting, what do I need to do? And dad's hurting, what do I need to do? And, you know, oh, I better run and do this and I better run and do that. No, they're like, I want to go play. You know, what can I do to have fun? What do I want to eat? What do I want to wear? They're thinking about themselves and their life. They're engaged in their life until society or the parents or the culture or where they're at starts telling them, creating an environment that tells them that's not okay. You need to pay more attention to other people than yourself. That's how you stay safe. That's how you stay liked by people. And it's important to be liked by people, so if you're not liked, you're going to be hurt, right? So the way back out of that, to get back to where a child, you know, like the children, that energy and that enthusiasm for life is to go back to getting focused on your life again and on you and on what you love and on who you are as a person. And when you've been so detached and so cut off from that from so many years, it is a process. It starts. Every journey starts with the first step, and the first step is the commitment. You have to commit to it. You have to say, okay, I'm committed to this and I'm going to figure it out. But it can also be quite a journey, and sometimes it can be a struggle, and it can be discouraging at times, because like for me, I remember I literally cried one day when I realized I loved the color blue. Like, oh, that's my favorite color, like like baby blues and the hues of blues. I realized how much I loved blue and the ocean, because I had always just had this falsy thing, of, oh, I like pink, because girls are supposed to like pink, yeah, pink's my favorite color. And it was a falsy thing that I had learned outside of myself. And I do like pink, there's nothing wrong with it. Now, since then, and that was a few years ago, but now since then I've found that I've learned to love certain color combinations, and those are the color combinations that I'm just now starting to get for my web page and stuff are new, and they're actually very authentic to me, and I'm excited about them. Where before I had color combinations, I was just kind of trying to figure it out still. I had no idea. Even colors. I've said this before. I used to not even pay attention when I had to go to the bathroom, and I was always, by the time I went to the bathroom, I was always barely walking into the bathroom. And I've had problems with that because I wouldn't even listen to my body because I was too busy out here with other people and concerns, and I haven't completely overcome everything. I'm still working on things. But I can stand here in front of this video and talk this whole time to people that I don't know, people that I do know, and people that I don't know. I would have never been able to do that when I was 18 years old. I could hardly talk to one person without getting dizzy and feel like I was going to pass out because I was so scared of people and had so little belief in myself and thought I looked so stupid and must sound so dumb, and perhaps to others I did because I carried that energy around with me. So and I did have a lot of ignorance because of the way I was raised. I didn't have a lot of advantages that most children get in our society. And I know there's plenty that don't have advantages, and I don't feel like my life by any means was worse than anybody else's or anything like that. I don't even compare that way. All I know is that there was things that were very unhealthy, and they were very painful, and it was very hard for me to heal from a lot of the abuse and trauma that I went through as a child. And I can still feel really sensitive to it when I talk to it at any depth. A lot of times I'll start crying because it's hard for me to even go there still, just because it was so painful, but I can talk about it a lot more freer than I ever was able to before, and without the shame around it that I used to feel so much shame with it. I've been able to shed the shame. But I wanted to talk about that with you all and talk about what it is to be sensitive and how sensitives and can be drawn into relationships. Mine, like my big major one, was the church. I've had other relationships that I've had to work through that way too, but the church was a huge one for me that I got drawn into because of my sensitive nature that had the narcissistic sensitive dynamic going on within it. And eventually being sensitive and being so focused on everybody else and not understanding that I was a sensitive brought me to a place of deep depression and really realizing that I had no sense of myself, and the depression was so deep that I thought about death a lot. On High Vibes Life, it's about living life in love, and that love has to start with self-love. High Vibes Life is anything that is love and above, and it has to start with self-love. You can't just say, oh, I'm just going to love everybody, and because you cannot love anybody anymore than you've truly loved yourself. You may think you do because you're being nice to them, but nice is not necessarily love. Love is so much more deeper than nice. And kindness, if somebody's truly a loving person, they're going to be kind, and a lot of people say that's splitting hairs, but it's not, because there's nice people that lure children into cars to be kidnapped. And there's nice people that lure women into horrible relationships or into sex trafficking. And there's nice people that murder. So I'm not splitting hairs with, but a kind person would never murder. Okay? So I'm not trying to split hairs here. I'm just trying to explain that a little bit. But High Vibes Life, that's what it's about. And my course, Genuine Self-Love, is designed to systematically help somebody that's a very sensitive person, that is sensitive about who they are as a person, to come systematically, do exercises, do little, incorporate different habits, talk on a one-on-one coaching calls with myself, somebody that is very intuitive, that has been through it, that gets it on every level, and to bring them through. And I think it's 7 weeks, 8 weeks. I have to recheck that because I've tweaked it a couple times. And I'm working on my second tier right now, which is Taking Back Your Crown, which I'm so excited about. I'm almost done with it, and it's going to be so awesome. But Genuine Self-Love is very awesome too, and it'll bring you from that place of just feeling like, I'm just I don't know about my life. And especially if you're getting older and you're just thinking, how much do I have to live anyways, and all that kind of feeling, and just feeling like this low-grade depression, and you don't know what to do with it. It can actually refocus you on yourself. It gives you things to do every day, weekly, little things, steps to take, little baby steps to take to bring you to a place where you start having epiphanies, realizing why you're feeling that way, understanding who you are, understanding yourself better, getting more excited about life, doing more things for yourself, focusing more on yourself, getting a little bit more excited about life as you go. And it's just awesome. So, if you're interested, or anybody else that could use this type of coaching, this type of help, could use my course, Genuine Self-Love, please tell them about it. Please tag them in the comments below. If there's something any questions that you have, or if there's something that you need to understand further, feel free to comment below, ask it below, or I offer a free 30-minute, one-time 30-minute call to anybody out there that has never talked to me before and that might want to talk to me and have some questions. We can hop on the phone for free, and you can ask whatever you want. No pressures. If you decide you wanted to further work with me, that's great, but that's not necessary to get on this call with me and to ask a question or to get some further understanding. Again, it's a one-time only free 30-minute call, and there's a link in the description below. So I hope this has been insightful for you and helpful for you. If you know anybody else that could use this video, again, I ask that you would share it and that you would give it a thumbs up and that you would follow me and hit the bell. The more comments I get, the more thumbs up I get, the more people are able to see the content that I put out here. It's just the way the social media works. So sometimes I always try to remember that when I watch somebody's video and I got something good, sometimes I'll turn it off and then I'll be like, oh my gosh, yeah, they just gave me 30 minutes of really good content. I'm gonna go back and give them a thumbs up because I know it helps them. And then I feel like it's the least I can do, you know, for that free content that they took their time out to give for me. So I'd appreciate it, and I hope you guys have a good day and I hope this has been helpful, and I'll talk to you next time.